Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06 here on the super busy Halloween morning. But you know what? Every show here is a thriller, I always like to say. Don't you, Julie Gunlock?
That's right.
Thank you very much. Coming up later here at 7:15, Gabe Kaminsky of the Washington Examiner, one of our famous young reporters. In 7:35, Ian Lovejoy running for House of Delegates in Virginia. 8:05, we've got, I picture Gloria Mercer as like the psychic in Poltergeist.
Me too.
Right? She's going to walk into the house and start talking to all the ghosts.
Towards the light.
She's with Weeping Souls Paramormal, which just freaks me out just hearing the name of that. And then at 8:35, Puneet Aluwalia running for Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. Why are you laughing at every time I say his name? It's different pronunciation. Puneet is all you need to know. Puneet for Families. I feel like since I mangled his last name, I should give him more promotion.
Look,
Puneet
I have no right.
Families.
You have to do the intro, so I shouldn't criticize.
Joining us right now, I think this is an easier one to pronounce. Dan Hoffman. Dan Hoffman is a veteran of the Central Intelligence Agency, and he lends his expertise to our conversation now about the events on the ground in Israel. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Hoffman.
Oh, hey, it's a pleasure. Good morning, everybody.
Of course, the IDF and Mossad and all of the various agencies in Israel charged with that country's protection has been calling for 3 weeks now the release of these hostages, and that has not occurred, not in any real way. I think 2, maybe 3 hostages have been released. And so now the real ground forces are doing their job to go in block by block into Gaza. At this point, is there any hope for rescue of these hostages, do you think? Or the fact that Israel is now rolling in and starting their ground campaign, is this sort of an indication that they have sort of determined that there's no hope?
Well, I think Israel has 3 goals going into Gaza. The first one is to eliminate Hamas, because they cannot allow Hamas to exist in ungoverned space in Gaza to plot terrorist attacks against innocent Israeli civilians. The second priority is, as you said, to try to release those hostages, very difficult to do. And the third is to try to prevent a wider war where Israel is engaged militarily in real combat against Iran or Lebanese Hezbollah. I was very concerned, obviously, I think like most people, about the fate of the hostages once they were taken to Gaza. These are suicidal Hamas terrorists who don't hold much worth for their own lives, let alone the lives of others. Yeah. And that would absolutely be the concern.
So, I mean, and to that end, it seems as though we knew this was going to happen. We're 3 weeks post-attack, and there's a lot of finger-pointing, and it seems like a lot of people are suggesting that the vaunted Israeli intelligence agencies really dropped the ball. They saw some activity, it appears, from a New York Times article, but they thought it was just exercises, and they didn't realize that it was the real deal. What do you think?
Well, I think it's clearly an intelligence failure, and it occurred. It's a perfect storm where Israel didn't have the collection. They didn't have the sources inside Hamas who could have warned them that an attack was being planned. Israel did not do very good analysis. They were focused on Iran and on Hezbollah, did not think Hamas was a threat. You're right, Hamas was practicing some pretty good deception. And then ultimate responsibility lies with the executive decision maker. That's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who was focused on judicial reform and other things. Remember, there were pilots who were refusing to report to their duty stations out of protest over domestic issues, and so there was real concern there as well. I think that we'll see a commission after the war. I'm sure Israel will do a lot of introspection to see where they've made these such significant mistakes. But right now, they need to take the fight to the enemy. They need to rely on the intelligence, the extent to which they have it, to make good decisions. You talk about the hostages, that requires great intelligence to know where they are, an element of surprise, and then really skilled special operations officers to go in there and somehow rescue them. But with hundreds of miles of tunnels where the hostages are likely being kept, it is an extraordinarily difficult challenge.
Dan, we have seen some really disturbing things here in the United States and also in Europe. Extremists here in the United States defending Hamas and showing just the rise of anti-Semitism And I say the rise, it seems like it's been here for a long time and people have been ignoring it. But what is the national security implications of that? Is the administration going to take this seriously? What can be done? I mean, should we be deporting students who are rallying and basically defending Hamas? What can the U.S. government do? And will this administration pay attention to that?
Well, I'll tell you that as a concerned citizen, first and foremost, there's a state and local law enforcement element to all of this. And so at Cornell University, for example, where there have been protests and Jewish students put at risk, there's got to be a state and local law enforcement response to that. That's the first thing. Secondly, there has to be a federal government response where the president and his team gets up on their bully pulpit and talks about this issue. The enemy, we're losing the information war right now to Hamas and Iran. Hamas it has done more to hurt their fellow Palestinians than Israel ever will. And that's the narrative that we need to get out there, but we're not doing a great job. And if you look at the United Nations, there's a lot of support for Hamas in the United Nations too. We haven't bifurcated Hamas and Palestinians who are simply being used as pawns by Iran and by Hezbollah. And that's a tragedy in its own right. But Israel has no choice but to do what they're doing. And hence, why we used to say when I served in the Middle East, I served in Iraq for a year, and we'd say as bad as things are today, well, at least they'll just get a little bit worse tomorrow.
Dan Hoffman's our guest. You know him as a Fox News contributor and a former CIA station chief. And Dan, asking you to give your expertise now on an issue that sort of crosses the lines of CIA work, FBI work, but it has to do with our homeland. Do you have any doubt that with the border security problems that we've had and the number of people we know have crossed in illegally who are on the terror watch list, given what we've seen in the Middle East and the growing tensions there, do you have any doubt that something's brewing here at home?
Oh, I have no doubt something's always brewing at home. Look, we left behind a terrorist state in Afghanistan where Al-Qaeda and ISIS are plotting against us. If there's one thing we learned from 9/11, it's don't give the terrorists that kind of space without any pressure, without us collecting intelligence on them and eliminating those threats, preempting those threats before they're visited on our homeland. This is literally at the point of attack on our southern border. And yes, I'm concerned about nefarious adult age male fighters potentially making their way into our country and then building out sleeper cells. That's kind of the exact MO that Iran would want to use. And so that is a concern. And the United States, we've got a big bullseye right now in our country, and it's been there for a long time since bin Laden declared a fatwa against us in the 90s. And if we don't defend ourselves way out left of boom, that is in the dangerous places where my old colleagues at CIA and our military, God bless them, are serving to detect threats and preempt them. And if we don't build up our ability to detect those threats even closer to the homeland, then we'll suffer the consequences.
Dan Hoffman, we'd love to have you back. We've got a busy hour here, so we're up against it. But please stay close to us as things continue to develop here and overseas. Thank you for everything, and thank you for your service to the CIA.
All right. Have a great day.
7:15 WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the 5s with Jamie Whitten in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
WMAL. Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Later this morning on the Chris Plante Show, Biden's top aides are deeply frustrated and somewhat bitter with the election only 53 weeks away. 9 a.m. on WMAL.
Gabe Kaminsky is over at the Washington Examiner, an investigative reporter doing, well, what few reporters do anymore, actually investigating things. I also want to point out he's a graduate and product of the National Journalism Center, which is part of Young America's Foundation that I'm proudly on the board of. So we're doing our best to encourage a crop of new young reporters here in Washington. And you've got a new expose here, Gabe. First of all, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Larry. Thanks for having me.
Gabe, explain who Arabella Advisors are.
Yeah, so Arabella is essentially the largest liberal dark money network in the United States. It's an LLC that manages various nonprofits, particularly charities that in turn handle activities and fund other causes across the United States. So essentially, it's an arrangement that allows various organizations to shield themselves from disclosure of filing formal financial disclosures. And what our story here is on is specifically on how two groups in this sort of liberal financing network cutting ties with a charity in Arizona that we at the Washington Examiner have been reporting on since November 2022 has been sharing ties to Palestinian terrorism, particularly the Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine. So this is the latest group to kind of jump away from this organization.
So Arabella had these groups called New Venture Fund and Windward Fund. So those were two charities. And they received, was it near $500,000 between 2020 and 2021? What did these groups fund with that money?
So New Venture Fund and Windward Fund are under that umbrella organization, and they had given $473,000 to an organization called Alliance for Global Justice in Arizona, a 501c3 charity that for the last year now, people have been, particularly legal experts we've spoken to, have raised concerns in Congress because Alliance for Global Justice sponsors an Israeli designated terror organization called Sami Dune that's an organizing pro-Hamas rallies across the U.S. and fallout of the terror attack against Israel. And so that's what the largest financier of the left is supporting.
So this group, Sami Dune, which is supported by Alliance for Global Justice, which is supported for Arabella Advisors. It's like the Hunter Biden shell corporations.
Really is.
The money moves back and forth, so it's hard to trace unless you've got a good investigative reporter like Gabe Kaminsky at the Washington Examiner. Arabella Advisors, a huge advisory group that is affiliated with Democrats, the party, and candidates. They fund this group called Alliance for Global Justice. Alliance for Global Justice gives money to Sami Dune, and Sami Dune is funding all these pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas demonstrations you're seeing around the world. And the government of Israel has called Sami Dune a terror group. Is that what I'm getting?
That's correct. And Sami Dune also shares employees with the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which is another U.S. designated terror organization. The other thing I note about Sami Dune is earlier this year, following our reporting, 4 different payment processors dropped it, including PayPal. So this really isn't a political thing, and financial institutions have recognized it.
But Sami Dune is still exists. It's still doing business. It still gets some funding other places.
So essentially, Sami Dune, because of how fiscal sponsorship works, it's actually not its own tax-exempt organization. It's under the umbrella of Alliance for Global Justice. And because Alliance for Global Justice is unable to receive credit cards online now, we'll see how that impacts Sami Dune because it's now unable to fundraise online.
And these charities, the New Venture Fund and the Windward Fund, these are liberal funds that steer money all over the place, affiliated with Arabella Advisors, and they're linked directly with the Democrats.
That's right. Yeah. So these are charities managed by this sort of umbrella LLC. And New Venture Fund and Windward Fund are sort of notoriously major funders of Democratic-tied causes across the U.S., issues across the aisle, climate change issues, racial justice issues, and whatnot.
You know, there's some great groups out there that are sort of documenting when individuals tear down the pictures of those who've been kidnapped. And there's sort of this name and shame movement, which is so important. But this is even more important, exposing these networks. Did you find it was difficult to find information about this? And have you talked to anyone at New Venture Fund or Windward Fund or Arabella? Have you talked directly to these people?
Well, the most recent thing was, so New Venture Fund, Windward Fund, my only communication as of recent was them saying we will not donate. Prior, in the past, about a year ago, New Venture Fund, Windward Fund had told me that their money to Alliance for Global Justice was specifically for some sort of climate change initiative. And so the point is, Alliance for Global Justice manages a variety of organizations, but members of Congress that we've spoken to who have launched investigations into this have raised concerns over this money fungible aspect, because if a group is sponsoring a group designated as a terror organization in Israel, they're worried either way that it kind of appears like a slush fund.
And you give your money to something called Alliance for Global Justice, and is there anything more left-wing than that, right? And it's like, oh, of course. And then the next thing you know, Alliance for Global Justice is giving money to a group called Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which just has terror group written all over it because they are a terror group. And that's where the money's going. And it's tied directly to Democrat politicians on Capitol Hill and in the White House. Gabe Kaminsky, great. I feel like I always use this phrase. Gabe Kaminsky, great reporting. But that's what's happening.
So important.
Gabe, thank you so much. Great job.
Thank you both. Appreciate it.
It is 7:20.
Now,
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:37. It's O'Connor and Company on this Halloween morning. And can I just take a moment to remind everybody, when you're driving home today, take it easy.
Yes.
Slow down.
Yes.
You don't need to be in a rush. There are little kids everywhere.
Yes.
And
Little
they're not
kids-
paying attention.
Little kids do silly things like run out in traffic.
Yeah.
So be careful.
Chill
Good
out.
point.
This is the day to not be in a rush going home. Thank you. Coming up at 8:05, Gloria Mercer of Weeping Souls Paranormal. She's an investigator, researcher. She's a ghost hunter.
Spooky.
Coming up at 8:35, Puneet Aluwalia, running for Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. Let's just go with that. Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. This, by the way, is a great Halloween movie to watch. American Werewolf in London.
Oh, yes.
Perfect mix of horror movie, special effects, and sort of 80s raunch.
What's it rated?
Oh, it's definitely R.
Is it R?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
it's 80s R.
It's
like,
80s
you know,
R. That's
yeah, it's like Animal House.
NC-17.
And Animal House meets Werewolf
Violence,
Story.
yeah.
Ian Lovejoy is rated G, though, so let's bring him in here and keep it clean. He's with the running for the Virginia House of Delegates to represent District 22. I always start this way, Mr. Lovejoy. Tell everyone what District 22 is, because with redistricting, people are confused as to who they're voting for and where they live.
Good morning, Larry,
Morning.
Julie. I appreciate the opportunity to be on, and you're absolutely right. Probably the first thing we talk about every time we actually get a voter at the doors is where the heck are we all and what district is what. So HD 22 came out of redistricting. It's mid to western Prince William County, so it wraps around the city of Manassas. It's the communities of Bristow, much of Gainesville, through Nokesville, and parts of our Coles magisterial district, and it runs right up to the city of Manassas but doesn't include it. So it's a large territory.
Okay. This was Danica Rome's district, was it not, or is that adjacent?
It's adjacent. It gobbled up several different pieces of different House of Delegates districts. It's mostly the former House District 50.
Gotcha.
That is the largest predecessor piece. Yeah.
Okay. And so, and obviously, listen, the demographics in these areas have been changing and evolving. But this is a big year for Republicans to grow that lead in the House of Delegates and also flip the Senate, as you've heard Governor Youngkin say. And I know that he's been campaigning for you too, Mr. Lovejoy. Tell me about what the priorities are right now as we lead up to the final day of voting.
Well, our campaign has knocked over 20,000 doors, and the consistent message we're hearing from folks centers around kitchen table issues. It's cost of living. We all know that Northern Virginia is not a cheap place to live, but the outrageous inflation over the last 2 or 3 years has really started to redline some families. People are getting those personal property tax bills here at the end of the year, the dreaded car tax, and that adds insult to injury. So folks are really starting to see the challenge in finances right now. Crime is on the rise in Prince William County. It's unavoidable and it's impossible to deny. Violent crime is up 70%, and so we're starting to see it really leach into our suburban communities, and folks are on edge about that. And folks want us to support our police and make sure that they feel safe in their communities. And the message that Governor Youngkin landed on during his race is still resonating with folks. Parents want a seat at the table when it comes to their children's education, and they don't want to be told to be quiet about it. So that's what we're hearing from the doors.
Well, just want to pull on that thread a little bit on parents' rights. Your opponent, Travis Nembhard, has been he's been out canvassing with Danica Roem, who is probably one of the most anti-parent candidates now running in Virginia. Why will you do a better job for parents than Travis Nembhard?
Well, I think, I mentioned this to people quite a bit. I mean, how outrageous it is that we even have to campaign on the notion that parents should be at the head of the table for children's education.
Yeah.
That should not be a shocking position for any public servant or politician to take. And how far we have drifted from the way education should be, that is a shocking statement or a controversial idea in some people's minds. Parents do not belong to the state. They are not co-parenting with the state. We have to do everything we can, and we've seen that out of the Youngkin administration to reorient decision-making to the parents. I was on a city council for 8 years, and I will tell you, working with school boards in the area, parents do need to go and talk and engage with their school boards, but that's reciprocal. School boards need to welcome them. It can't just be bake sales and, buying jerseys for the football team. It has to be, school boards have to actually engage when parents come and have things to say that aren't necessarily what they want to hear, and you can't shut them down. And the fact that we're even having to fight that battle is just shocking to me.
Yeah, it sure is. And, of course, the other big battle that people are fighting is the crime issue. And I know that Governor Youngkin, we talked to him last week, he would love to put some real change here in state law so that it supports local county jurisdictions. What will you be able to do, and how are you focusing on this as a priority?
Well, we're at the point now where VML, the Virginia Municipal League, that represents cities and localities around Virginia, which by no means is a center-right organization. Most consider it somewhat of a center-left organization. We're at the point now where they are petitioning to strengthen local police authority in stopping individuals, to bring back the ability to stop crimes before they even happen, because they're able to pull people over and do those stops and searches for issues that the Democrats have removed. You have fentanyl kills 3 or 4 people a day in Virginia. That's a day. And the fact that we can't pass legislation that gets tougher on drug dealers is an absolute shame. And so certainly Richmond sets the attitude. It sets the attitude for how we address criminals versus victims. And then that, of course, goes into policy. And then that affects how our police can do their job on a daily basis. And we have to reorient. The pendulum has swung, and it's swung too far, and it needs to swing back towards the victim as opposed to the criminal.
VoteLovejoy.com is the website for Ian Lovejoy in this final week now. The election day is a week from today, so get out there. Why are you even talking to us, Ian Lovejoy? You've got work to do. Get the votes.
Thanks for talking to us.
People frown when you knock on their door at 7:30. We found that out.
There, see, I've gotten into more trouble doing that.
He's smart. He knows it.
Thank you, Ian Lovejoy. Appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good day.
It all starts out with trick-or-treating, and then things turn very, very dark and scary. That's what happens in any Halloween movie, right?
That's right.
And then next thing you know, Michael Myers, not the comedian from Canada, is slashing you to bits. Mm-hmm. Let's face it, much of the Halloween observations that we Americans go through have to do with being scared, and ghosts and ghouls and goblins and anything else that alliterates there. Do you believe in hauntings?
I sort of want to, but I don't.
Why would you want to?
Because it's kind of,
We're Catholic. We believe in spirits. We believe that there are souls who could very well interact with us.
Come down in their big hoop skirt and say, no.
Of course, your ghost is wearing a hoop skirt.
Well, I live in an old city.
Scarlett O'Hara.
Totally.
You.
That's how I imagine all ghosts coming down looking like Melanie. No, I don't really. I mean, but again, I like scary things.
We have a guest about to join us.
Excellent.
Whose job is to sort of tap into, investigate, and find maybe those lost souls who are haunting you or I, especially if you just said you live in Alexandria, right?
Yeah.
In a historic home,
And they do ghost tours in Alexandria.
Right. Same in
and
Annapolis.
they're dressed up.
And
they're dressed up.
Well, out in rural Frederick County, Maryland, Monrovia, to be specific.
It's even got the great name, Monrovia.
The ghost of Monrovia.
Yeah. Vampires live there.
A family in this private home complained of what they believed was paranormal activity. And, well, here's a little bit of what was discovered.
Is there anyone here with us that would like to communicate?
We are not here to harm you. We just like to find out more about who you are.
Robert, are you here? If there's anyone present, can you give us a sign? Can you knock on something?
This little black thing on the table, if you come towards it, we can hear when you talk to us.
And you can draw energy off of it, or you can draw energy off of us.
See now, and by the way, while this video was going on, apparently
we should have knocked. When she said knock on something,
right,
we should have gone.
We should have just done that.
We should have made it more interesting.
How do they know that they're not summoning demons? This is what bothers me. See, like I do.
You definitely are Gen X. Too many movies about Ouija boards.
No, I'm Catholic.
No,
we believe in demons and Ouija boards. The Catholic Church says you shouldn't use Ouija boards.
I know.
And if you believe in angels, then you must believe in demons.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to mess with us on an ongoing basis.
They are.
Why would you invite them in?
Every time I pass Dunkin' Donuts, they're trying to mess with me. And I need Jesus. I need Jesus.
See, every time I drive down Canal Street in Georgetown, I see those stairs. And I know that they're trying to mess with us. Well, apparently this area, Maryland, is kind of a hotbed for hauntings.
These are old areas. These are
and
Civil War
ghosts.
sites. Yeah, look.
There were battles here.
Mm-hmm.
There were, and of course, the classic Indian burial site.
Yes.
From Poltergeist,
Spooky.
right? There's actually, if you go to MarylandHauntedHouses.com, you can actually see a list of action. This isn't like commercialized haunted houses where you pay to get the bejesus scared out of you. Why do people do that? By the way,
I love scaring my kids.
Well, yeah, okay, but you don't go like there are people in Prince George's County in particular. There are these they spend 2 months getting their house all done up. They sell for $20. Go in and people will just
scare the
do
living
horrible
daylights.
things to you.
Yes, jump out and
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. I don't like it. Don't like it. Don't need it. But anyway, these are actual haunted houses that you can visit. Of course, Fort McHenry, understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Edgar Allan Poe residence. How is that not
Ram's
haunted?
Head Tavern. I didn't know that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Right downtown Annapolis. You betcha. There's the ghost of failed music gigs gone by. Yeah.
No, but these are houses that are abandoned, or are they still being lived in?
No, there's just ghosts that live there.
Why do people live there?
Or they don't live there, but they're.
I always watch movies where I'm like in Poltergeist. Remember when she goes down to get like the Windex and she comes back up and all the chairs are up on the table?
Yeah, that's when you move.
I'm like, why? Why? And then she's excited about it. And then her daughter slides across the linoleum floor and she's like, isn't this great? No, move.
It's really not.
Move.
Yeah. Well, that most people do believe in haunted. I do. So I have a.
These people in Maryland need to move.
I have a just completely leave the state. Just leave it empty. Let Wes Moore be the last man standing. I believe in ghosts, but I also don't believe that they're going out of their way to mess with us. Demons, I think, do want to steer us away. Yeah. But ghosts and souls, I don't think they can actually interact with us.
The whole concept makes me uncomfortable and sad.
Well, get ready for our next guest coming up in just 10 minutes. Julie's going to be uncomfortable and sad. This is going to be great. Gloria Mercer, paranormal expert, joins us next.